Guys, welcome back. I hope you have had a great week and you're ready for another fun project. I'm going to jump right into the project and just voice over so that you can watch and don't have to take quite so long for this project. Um, we are still in the Middle Ages right now. And when I was a kid, it was more often called the Dark Ages than anything else. And I'm kind of glad that they changed the terminology about, what the Middle Ages or this time period between the Romans and the Renaissance, um, what we call it. Um, so one of the things, when I think about the Dark Ages, you kind of think that everybody's kind of in this really spooky, scary time, and nobody really knew anything, and that really wasn't necessarily the case. I mean, they were definitely in a different time than they were during the Romans or the Greeks. But Europe was going through some changes, and there were some pretty amazing discoveries that came out um, of the time period known as the Middle Ages. And one of them, believe it or not, is books. Prior to the Middle Ages, books were not a thing. They actually came out of the Middle Age time period. And of course, we know most of it was done with these illuminated manuscripts. What were they? Well, for the most part, they were Bibles that were handwritten and drawn. That's right, I said drawn, and painted because there would be pictures that would be in those Bibles. And not only that, just even some of the letters and the margins were covered with pictures and decorations and things like that. It's a really cool thing because during this period, there was a lot of different culture. Interchange with ideas and things like that, from the Celtics all the way over to the Islams, with their style and things like that being incorporated and into multiple styles to create unique styles all to themselves. Each one of these illuminated manuscripts was hand done. It could take months for every book to be complete, and it was worth a lot of money. They still are. And there are still collections of them today. Um, I did some research. If you go onto YouTube and look around about it, if you're curious about the history behind it, it is pretty interesting, and they are just fascinating. And of course, because they are done by people, traditionally, originally monks, put these together. Eventually, they were done by people, and other books were written before we got the printing press. Um, but they, had this ability to make every single one of these books unique. And that is something that we don't get nowadays with, the way that books are printed since the time of the printing press, which we are coming up on. However, the book was created because carrying scrolls around just wasn't ideal, and books made it much easier to carry the Word of God around in the form of the Bibles. And this way, then, the missions could take the Word with them when they went. So that's kind of how books started. And, we know them today. They're everywhere. Of course, now we've even got digital versions on Kindles and phones and other things. But this is actually where they started. Um, and I can honestly tell you it is a labor of love. Now, if you would like to do this project with your kids, I would highly recommend it. Now, I painted this, but this is one of those cool projects that you can really use any medium that you want to. I cannot say that this is an original drawing. I did copy it. Some of it is mine that I threw in there, but I really wanted to see what it would feel like to paint these out, because I can only imagine that that's how most of these were created with the monks to do. Now, with me painting, I will tell you, probably took me about an hour and a half or so to complete this whole thing. But you can print out sheets. If you Google search illuminated manuscript coloring sheets, you will find them out there. And a lot of them look like adult coloring books. So even an adult coloring sheet would be wonderful as well. And remember, these illuminated manuscripts didn't just have the written word. Like if you pick up a Bible today, most often there's no pictures in it. Some do. Most often they do not. The Bibles of the illuminated manuscripts would have had pictures, again, between the margins and sometimes full-blown page pictures. So if really what you guys want to do is just color a picture, that would be awesome. And you can really get into the idea of how much detail and whatnot is put in there into this medium. It is quite incredible. How much they did it. A lot of people have said that it must have been boring. I mean, I don't know. It was fun. And if you watch some of the documentaries about the illuminated manuscripts, you will see that there are mistakes, because of course that's one of the first things that I thought is if you're writing, and some of these books are not tiny, if you're writing everything and you realize you make a mistake, do you have to redo the whole thing? These are not in pencil. You can't just go back and erase it. But in fact, no, you could, sometimes they made mistakes and they just put the letters or fixed the letters as best as they could. Sometimes they even made notes in the margin about the fact that they made a mistake, which is pretty cool. They even have some funny things in here, and you're going to see one of them I thought the funniest, and it wasn't just in one book. It's in multiple books, and that is at the bottom, a knight attacking a giant snail. The one thing I think that, when you look at even literature from the Renaissance period or things like that, there's things in there that don't make any sense to us. And somewhere in there, I'm assuming that, some of the pictures and sayings and things like that that you find in these illuminated manuscripts, there's probably a joke or a story behind it. I'm not sure where, but I love the idea of the knights attacking this giant snail. So the paints that I'm using here are metallic because, of course, a lot of the illuminated manuscripts were done with metallic paints. But again, this is one of those things you can use anything with. Now, my recommendation, if you're going to do it like an adult coloring sheet, just that you have the preciseness, because some of those can be pretty tiny. I would highly recommend like a colored pencil. You could use a crayon or something like that, obviously for little kids. Markers would work too. And most of those already have the black around it for the outlines. For this, at the end, you will see, I went ahead and put the black outline in with the ink. I spared you from having to watch all of that. I did it off camera because otherwise it just would have taken so much longer. But that's what I did. I used an ink pen and I outlined everything so that things would show up and whatnot. And yeah, again, it's just about having fun and learning, about the, how they did it and what was done way back when. I can only imagine when this was all done by hand. And a lot of times these manuscripts would have been ordered and you'd have to wait months for it. So I wonder sometimes maybe if the family had anything to do with how, what was in it or how it was made, if they knew who they were making it for. Questions I would have to look up. I don't remember seeing that in my research, but yeah, and for some of them, especially knowing sometimes that Europe isn't the brightest of places come winter time and things like that. I'm guessing this would have done by, candlelight and things like that. Definitely by open windows. But yeah, it was It was tedious, as you can see, as I'm kind of going through. I pulled out some bigger paints and or some bigger paint brushes rather, and I never used them. I had to move to actually had to get a smaller one because the spaces are pretty teeny tiny. Um, Now I don't know what they used, if they used a paintbrush or if they used a quill when they were actually writing the words. Um, Now here's where I'm starting my night. Now, I traced most of this over, but if you see me using that eraser there, that is a kneaded eraser. If you are an artist, you really need to have one of those. It is a perfect eraser for pulling up just enough of the pencil that you're using for your outline so that you can see the outline, but others won't see it. Unfortunately, by doing that, because I didn't want the graphite getting into um, the night, into that silver, and dulling the silver, I kind of lost some of my silver. So I used a pen to outline slightly that knight at the bottom, who's in that awesome pose getting ready to attack that giant snail that's there at the bottom. Um, Again, I don't know why that just tickles my funny bone so much, but it does. Never thought of snails as, as being vicious and needing attacking. The paints that I used are all acrylics. I got them at Hobby Lobby, but they are metallics. But any craft paint or anything, if you choose to use paint, is available out there. Again, I would probably, especially if you print out some of those coloring sheets, would not recommend that for the littles. I would opt for your markers, your crayons, your colored pencils instead. I hope you guys enjoy this project if you go for it and do it, and certainly do some learning on the history of them. It is very, very interesting. Enjoy, guys. And here is my finished project, guys. So this is my little illuminated manuscript. Now again, I started out with, my traceable, and I did the same thing that I did. If you want to know how to do that, go and watch the previous video with the cat and the pumpkin. I go in detail about how to transfer the image. Time was of the essence this time, but I wanted to try doing a painting of this instead of just going through and doing a coloring sheet. I wanted a little bit more of a challenge, but again, time was an issue. So it's not perfect, but what is. I really, really like the way that it turned out. So I wanted to show you, this is this Sargent Art. These are the acrylics that I was using through it. I also used these if you choose to do some painting. Now I would prefer these over these. These were a little thick and it made it a little difficult to go through. These were nice and fluid, so a nice craft paint is probably going to be better. And I am using my typical Canson mixed media. So if you are going to paint it, again, you know your skill level, you know your kids' skill levels. Some of these are pretty tedious, so you're going to need tiny paint brushes, some decent thin paints I would recommend. One of these cute little uh, um, palettes would be great if you have one. If not, something else would work, but this kind of kept the thinner crafty paints from spilling out all over the place. That's what I would recommend. But again, if you want to just do a coloring sheet, just Google search some illuminated manuscripts or illuminated manuscript adult coloring sheets, and they're out there. And you can just have some fun with colored pencils, markers, crayons, anything like that. It's just a lot of fun to really, for me, it really helped me appreciate, what these guys did when it was the time when books were written by hand and pictures were all done by hand, time before printing machine. Taking a time out to do this really will give you an appreciation, a better appreciation for what these, men did. many years ago. I hope you enjoy it, and I hope that it helps to kind of spark some interest in history. Again, didn't know that this is where books came from, but it kind of makes sense. And this is the start of where books came from. So hopefully that'll help you, and I hope you guys enjoy the project. If you do this or anything like it, again, even if it's a coloring sheet, post it on our Facebook page. I would love to see it. Other people would love to see it. You have no idea how encouraging it is for others to see the pictures of your art and to get positive feedback about it. Because again, we're all on a journey, and doesn't matter where you are. It's the point is that you're doing it. You start someplace and you go one foot in front of the others. All right, guys, enjoy your day.